Hello everyone. We're going to continue today on our tutorial regarding how to configure the BlueMicro firmware. So one of the things that we can I kind of ran into last time in my tutorial is I didn't remember all the macros or those KC things that we needed to add in here for all the different keys that I wanted to add. So let me show you where we can actually get what are all these identifiers for getting the right key codes sent for what we want to set up. And I'll also show you as well where we can actually get some more advanced functionality like the media keys. So let's go into our firmware here. So where we're going to go into the firmware is there's actually two files I want to show you. The first one is the one called HID Keycodes. Now in here you can actually see very clearly there's a large number of definitions that are in here. Now we can see very clearly here's the whole set of keys. The first one being not a key or NO, and then we've got rollover, which is case equivalent to the KC transparent, which is a special function for layers. So that key will essentially be the same as the one into a lower layer. But then as we go down, there's all the standard keys like letters and numbers, and then enters, escape, backspace, tab, and so on. The function keys, print screen, scroll lock, and then any keypads or that slash asterisk. So if you remember on a full keyboard, there's a numbers at the top of the letters, but there's a numbers on the numeric keypad, so that those are actually different key codes. And then there's even things like F20 and F24, things that are not regularly found on a normal keyboard. And there's a bunch of other ones that kind of exist in here that are probably not very used anywhere. And then as I keep scrolling down, there's a few other ones that are not defined that we don't use at all. Then there's the modifiers like Control, Shift, Alt, and so on. Then this is where the layers are also defined. So layer 0 all the way to 16. So we've got 16 layers already defined in here. If we need to have more, then well, I haven't run into a situation where we need more layers, but if we need more, then we'll have to do something. Then we've got some special ones. And you can see here I've got reset, debug, EPROM reset, DFU, clear bonds. So these are special keyboard functions that you can see it's KB with this. So all it is like this. Then there's some backlight functions. So backlight toggle on, off. Then there's functions for Bluetooth, USB, and automatic switching. So these are not the key codes are defined, but the functions in the keyboard may not be fully implemented or may not be available depending on the hardware you have. Then RGB functions again. Then we've got a macro to essentially print the battery status or print the information status. Then can go into help mode. So this is to say, okay, well, when we get macros, which macro we're calling. Then we've got some media keys, things like the power button, like going to sleep, reset, display brightness and dim. And these are all defined in the standards. So if, for example, one computer has implemented something differently than the standard, kind of thinking either Apple or Linux, sometimes some of these key code might not work quite the same way. Then media control, like volume up and down, these are actually right here. So audio volume up, audio volume down. So these are kind of two interesting ones. And these long ones are also accessible a different way. Then we've got World Wide Web, and then some calculators and Explorer. Then we've got some like simplified, for example, volume up and volume down. It calls the other one. So these are media keys. Then we've got like mouse key codes right in here, so we can go and say mouse up, mouse down, and different buttons, so we can have it right there. So these are some of the key codes we have here. So that's actually quite a lot all defined there. Then we've got some more advanced ones. So for example, if we want to have a modded key, so if I want to say Shift A, then I can go and say mod with the left controller, or mod with the left shift with the key itself. So we've got a few pieces in here. We've got, for example, modifiers for that. And then these are some of the macros we've seen used a little bit earlier into our key codes, where we're creating new commands to catch. So we won't really need to see those. Then we've got toggles and one shot. We'll get to that in a different tutorial. Then we've got a shift, so you can see use the mod with the mod shift. So see here, there's that macro for the mod. So use this mod. So these macros here are probably ones that we're going to want to use. So shift with the mod. Then you can see more, for example, keys like the @ symbol, which is actually shift 2. So we've got one already coded with the mod shift 2, already coded as an accessible key code that looks like all the other ones. And pipe, for example, the shift \. And then, for example, if I want to have shift a specific key, so this is the way we would be calling those. So these are some more of the advanced key codes. So, and we're going to have to go through some tutorials on some of these key codes a little bit later on. But I wanted to kind of go through where do I find information on some of the key codes and where are they defined. So this is where they are. So when we go in here and we want to go and remember, it was like equal, minus, slash, \, and all of those, and trying to remember. Well, all I need to do is go into either the HID key codes right here, and I just kind of scan through and see what these are, or the advanced one, and I just copy the definition that's on here. So for example, equal is in here, but then it's just copy and paste for that, and then we compile, and then it all merges it all together, and when we use it on the keyboard, it all works fine. So let's just get an example of one of those special keyboard functions in here. For example, that print information, that was kind of maybe an interesting one to add. So if I go at the bottom here, there was somewhere in here print information. There we go. So print info. So let's just take that and copy it in our key map, and we'll just go into, whenever we go into our other layer, I'm going to go print info, and then the other one, let's just go print battery for an example here. So, and then print battery. So when we're going to go into our third layer, we're going to have a special macro to print information or print the battery status. So let's just go and save that and then compile and flash it. So we're going to first compile it, flash it, and I'll show you what it looks like. And I'll probably just start a so we're going to adjust layer. There we go. So we're going to flash it, and I'm just going to start an empty file so that there's somewhere to send the information to. Because what it's going to be doing is those two special function, it's going to essentially type information about the keyboard in where you type. So it's a macro. So now we're flashing the bootloader, and we'll be flashing, and I'll come back whenever it's done. Okay, so it's compiled, so let's go and have a look. So remember, and let me just put the little camera on top there and put it small. So yeah, that's fine. So let's go here, and then what I'm going to do is just say, remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the regular layer. I just wanted a different keyboard here. Then when I go into the first one, so I've got my arrows, but I'm going to just go on this. So see the arrows go up and down, so that's not a surprise. Then the other one, we've got A, B, C. I'm going to go enter. Now, when I press both, this is where I've got my special functions. I'm going to go print info. There we go. So I've got my battery information coming in. So I've got, here's the millivolts and the percent. And then when I press this, keyboard name, platform, manufacturer, library, what it is, bootloader, and a device power. So I've got the two functions that I just added right there to type in here. So these are kind of like useful information about like what I'm talking about, what kind of keyboard, what kind of information is a keyboard programmed with, what's the library that I'm using, the bootloader, the serial number that is actually the part of the NRF52 chip, and device power. So this is what what's the power it's actually been configured right now, and we'll probably add more functions in the keyboard to be able to add in the firmware to add like change up and down the power or change any configuration that are more persistent, but it's not quite there yet today. In any case, we've actually gone through where do you get all the information for the key codes. We're going to be using some of the more advanced functionality specific into specific tutorials later on, but I kind of gave you just an example of two special keyboard functions. So they're not user programmable macros yet. So these are keyboard functions to tell us, for example, the battery level and the information on the keyboard itself. So this is what we've got for today. Thank you again for joining in, and I'll see you next time.